Hi, I'm Jamie Deonas, and I want to welcome my good friend Al Smith here today. Al is our Chief of Police for the Nassau County School District, and well, it's a pleasure to have you here today. And the timing is kind of ironic when we were talking about this several weeks ago, so I'm glad we've got this opportunity to chat today. Al, I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about the Nassau County School District, what we're doing for safety, what we've been doing for safety, and how all that ties in with the 16 schools, and to give a little backlog. When I went to school here, graduating in 1989, we didn't have school resource officers, we didn't have guardians, we didn't have anything more than teachers that guided us with a little heavier hand, I guess, than most. But now we have a lot of things that are in place for a lot of different reasons, and I get a lot of phone calls on this from both parents, grandparents, people that are thinking about relocating to Nassau County, and I was hoping just to get your perspective on that and to share it with everybody at home.
Well, absolutely, Board Member Deonas, and I'm going to call you Jamie because we've known each other and been friends for probably 25 years or more.
At least, yes.
At least, so yeah. Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. This is one of my fortes. So just to give you a little history, I retired from the Fernandina Beach Police Department in 2018. However, I started working as a school resource officer in Nassau County Schools during the 2011-2012 school year, and I was assigned to the Fernandina Beach High School. And it just so happens during that school year is February 14th, 2018, I believe to be the exact date.
Yes.
The Marjory Stoneman High School incident occurred in Parkland, Florida. And after that occurred, that really got me thinking hard about what I was doing at the school, what my mission was at the school, and what we needed to do to prevent that from ever happening at our school. So I took profound interest in school shootings and started really studying them hard, again, to try to figure out and determine what we could change, what improvements we could make at our school, at the particular school I was at that time. And what I found out was these incidents, for the most part, can be prevented through taking certain safety protocols, precautions, hardening our schools, but more importantly, instilling a mental health awareness program within our schools.
Yes, yes.
So we started doing that back in the Fernandina Beach High School in 2012. Actually, that was after the Sandy Hook school shooting.
Correct. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I got that wrong. It was not the Marjory Stoneman School. That occurred in 2018. It was the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in 2012.
Okay.
And so we started incorporating a lot of the safety features. We started a little team in our school we called the A-Team that included myself, Amy Pipkin from Communities in Schools.
Yes, yeah,
and
very well.
Carrie Elbert, who now works for Florida Psychological.
Yes. With
Dr. Drew over there. We started our own little team where we would perform interventions, and I think at the time you were mentoring students.
At the high school.
At the
That's
high
correct.
school.
Yes.
I remember seeing you there
Yeah.
regularly.
Yep.
And anyways, we started incorporating that in. So anytime, we'll fast forward now to 2018 to the Marjory Stoneman High School incident. After that incident occurred, some really good things came out of Tallahassee. What occurred, then Governor Rick Scott commissioned a commission to look into that incident, and with the assignment of figuring out how to prevent these from ever happening again in Florida schools. And a lot of good things came out of that commission, including some legislation that's now Florida law. So if you want, we can talk a little bit about that and what that means for our school district here in Florida.
Okay. Well, I want to go back to the original. So
Yep.
My very first school board meeting was on or about 2012, and I went with to support some teachers that were going through some negotiations, the Teachers Association or the Teachers Union, and You and I spoke at that meeting, first board meeting that I had ever attended, and understanding that we had resource officers at that time just at our high school and middle schools.
Correct.
I was elected on the board in 2014, and those were things that I talked with past administration about. What do we do if we have an incident in another school? Well, you know, times change, times morph, and we were basically sharing those resources between schools. Sandy Hook had just taken place during this time period when I was attending board meetings. But I still remember February 14th, 2018, was in my office and, you know, watching all this unfold. And I don't know if you saw all of that, but the earlier times, it wasn't even a news helicopter. It was like maybe a recreational person that was just filming and watching all that chaos that took place there. And
Correct.
then, and I've said this to several people that I've spoken with, then all of a sudden we had an executive session, emergency meetings, new guidelines were coming from Tallahassee. There was all of a sudden funding there to ramp up that, and we have made some monumental changes in our security. So I want to focus a little bit on that. So from 2018, we went from resource officers at just the high school and middle school level to now we have resource officers and/or guardians at all of our schools.
All of our schools, that's correct. So we still have contracts with our partners, law enforcement partners, Nassau County Sheriff's Department and the Fernandina Beach Police Department, who provide school resource officers for all of our high schools and middle schools. Then I believe it was your proposal that we start a school district police department. Am I correct?
There were a lot of conversations, and there were multiple board members that were on board.
Well, the dilemma was, at the time, the superintendent didn't, I remember her speaking, and she did not want to get in. She was adamant she did not want to get into the police business. And she was trying to encourage the sheriff, who's our current sheriff, Mr. Leeper, to take on the elementary schools.
Yes.
That was her wish. Unfortunately, I think Sheriff Leeper at the time was facing some monumental task of staffing his own department.
Sure.
And he just felt like that was just going to be too overwhelming for him at the time. And he kind of was disinterested in it.
Yes.
And so we moved forward with starting our own agency.
I remember those conversations well, and I can't say at the time I didn't disagree with Dr. Burns that, you know, we're in the business of educating students.
Absolutely.
We're in a completely, that has nothing to do with our core business, but it's very much a necessity of keeping our teachers and our students safe. And when we started down that process, we had districts calling us from all over the state wanting to know how we implemented our own police department because they were running into the same problems.
Right.
So we started off originally, you came here as the
School safety specialist.
Yes, so you morphed from a resource officer to now taking on the
School safety specialist position,
Okay.
which was a mandate that came out of Marjory, Stoneman, Douglas, that every school district have to hire a school safety specialist to oversee all the safety protocols within the school district and make sure all the new mandates were implemented properly.
Okay.
So I took on that task and at the same time was tasked with starting a police department within the school district.
That took an awful lot of lifting, Al Smith. I
will.
remember those conversations after board meetings in the parking lot and you and I talking one-on-one, and that was a huge, huge undertaking. But look where we are.
It was very challenging, and as you know, as a board member, a lot of the mandates were unfunded.
Yes.
So the biggest dilemma was where were we going to get the money to do this,
Right.
first and foremost. And absolutely, we can all agree on this, that you cannot put a price on the safety of our kids. And I think that ultimately, in the end, that's where we ended up.
Yes.
And we went ahead with it, and we did it, and I feel like we did it right. And our kids are safer now because of it.
I used to hear a lot that we're building an airplane while we're trying to fly it, and you and I used to fly together.
Correct.
We were
Yes.
much younger and probably not as bright as we are now, but
I believe that's a very good analogy.
yes. But it didn't stop there. So I have people asking, did you stop at just putting in resource officers or guardians, or what did we do north of that? And I took some pictures at several of our schools with the new secured front entrances, and fencing was a really, really big issue for us because we didn't want the schools to mimic a penitentiary setting, but it was necessary. I mean, there's no other way of fortifying a school than to at least fence off its parameters. But maybe if you could talk a little bit about what we did additional that came out of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas
So
event.
we'll start with the fencing. All of our schools now have a perimeter fencing that can totally be secured during the non-school hours, the entire perimeter of the school. And then we also have an interior fencing perimeter, which during school hours remains locked and secured. So we have 2 layers of fencing, more or less, now at all of our schools. We have secured vestibules in the front entranceways.
Yes.
So we have single access points at all of our schools now, which is a best practice put in place by the Florida Department of Safe Schools. We have that in place now. We have policies in place that all of our classroom doors remain locked during instructional hours.
Yes.
Which is a big thing in place. I mentioned our threat assessment teams at all of our schools now, which I think is probably one of the most important elements as far as school safety goes. Because as we all know, mental health is a huge issue with these kids and that commit these atrocities. And so what our threat assessments do now is they monitor our anonymous tip line tips that come in. They monitor the complaints from other students, staff members, and when a child is identified as on a potential risk, let's say, suffering some type of mental health problem, they identify them and then they start a review. And ultimately, in the end, what ends up happening is they end up helping that child get the help they need.
I would agree to that, yes. We have had
That's something that we
few.
had not had in the past. And I don't think a lot of people understand the significance of that. I really don't, Jamie. I went to a Why Teens Kill seminar in Jupiter, Florida. It was put on by a man named Phil Chalmers. Mr. Chalmers traveled the country and visited numerous prisons interviewing teen killers, primarily former school shooters, for the purpose of trying to identify why they committed the act they committed. And what came out of that is an extraordinary amount of information that I was fortunate enough to hear personally from him. And then what was so fabulous about that was that was first-hand information he received that he was delivering to us. This wasn't some study done by the experts that
Sure.
think they read a book and they think they know what's causing the problem. This guy actually went out and talked to the people that committed these crimes.
Real data.
Real data. And he brought forth a lot of things that we incorporate now into those threat assessment teams and things that we're looking for in teenagers. And I'm convinced that's the key to preventing these type of atrocities. All the hardening stuff we do is great, and it has worked out really well. It makes it a lot more difficult to get into any of our schools. Our schools are well fortified now.
Al, it's funny. So I was at Callahan Elementary with you just a few weeks ago. If you remember, I got brought in to read.
Yes.
And then I got roped back in for 2 more readings, and somehow I was in the same class, but it turned out to be great. But you and I toured that school, and that's the school that I had not been to, gosh, probably since COVID times, I guess, and everything got locked down. It had been a little while since I'd been there, and every classroom we went into was all locked. Everywhere we went, it just had a feel of, this is a secure place. This is a secure place. This is an area that's being monitored. We're seeing cameras in all of our schools now, cameras that are being recorded so we can watch things, in real time, as well as be able to view them after the fact. And I want to share with you one thing that was real impressive for me. I'm rarely early anywhere that I go, including this interview. But I picked up my grandson. He attends Fernandina Middle School, and I was grossly early. So I went in. I used our Raptor system. I gave him my driver's license. He scanned it, and I put my badge on. And the nice lady at the front desk, she says, "Oh, I know who you are. Let me get you an escort. Where do you need to go?" I said, "No, I'm looking at our improvements that we've had done at this school." And so she asked maybe 3 more times, "Are you sure you don't need an escort?" I said, "I graduated from this school. I know exactly where I'm going, but thank you. I'm just going to wander around." So Ella had 15 minutes before the bell rang. I just wanted to look at an addition, some HVAC stuff that Mr. Bunch and his team were putting together, and some stuff that was forthcoming for that school. And the first person that stopped me was a real nice lady in janitorial. And while she's talking to me, she was staring the entire time at my badge. "Can I help you?" She wanted to see what turned out to be what I believe the date and the time, and make sure the picture looked right. And I told her, I said, "Well, this is just, I'm not an attractive person, so the picture mimics the person." And I told her who I was and what I was doing. She seemed sold, but she kind of kept an eye on me anyway. Next, a gentleman walked out, a teacher, and he asked me, "Can I help you?" This was just, 2 wings over. I've got someone else that came out of a classroom because they saw me kind of wander in the corridors. I told him who I was. "I just want to take a quick peek here, and I'll be out of your hair." And then Dr. Crawford herself, she came out and she said, "Sir, you've been wandering around. How may I assist you in some shape or form?" So I say that because none of these 3 people knew me. I wasn't there with a giant sign on the back of my shirt that said school board member. I'm in areas that are inside that first layer of fencing, which were all secured off. So you had to go through that front office
Single point of access, yeah.
to get on campus. And it just made me feel good. I mean, even though I had to explain myself 3 times, it was an honor to do so. And I get the feeling that happens at all of our schools.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that is also a very key component. When I give my safety talks at the schools, that's one of the things I try to hammer home is we have officers now in all of our schools.
Yes.
But it takes all of us
Correct.
to keep our schools safe.
I would agree, yes.
And so I constantly try to hammer that. See something, say something. See something, say
Right.
something. If you're not comfortable stopping the person as they did with you, then go somewhere and call it in. So yes, that is great. I'm glad you brought that up. More and more, I actually have an award that I give out at Southside Elementary School called the Golden Donut Award.
I love it. Okay.
And so every time faculty member reports an incident like that, "Hey, I stopped so-and-so, I saw this, this is going on in the parking lot." That month, I award the Golden Donut Award to them for speaking out. And that just promotes them to be constantly
More
have their
vigilant.
head, more vigilant, have their head on a swivel.
Okay.
Because it definitely takes everyone to keep at school, or you walk around our campus, how vast they are.
Yes. Yes.
So, and again, I get a lot of comments a lot of times, Jamie, about the fencing. We have at least 6-foot fencing all around our schools, and you'll get the person that says, "Well, anybody can get over a fence." Sure, they can get over a fence, but they got to also get over a second fence,
Right.
and then they got to get through a locked door. So, what is our goal in all that? Slow them down and identify them.
Yes. Correct.
So we can have the proper response to
Yes.
stop them. So every layer of security we put in is meant to slow somebody down. It's not necessarily going to stop them, but they're probably going to be identified before they get to where they want to go.
Yes. And lastly, you do monthly safety assessments with principals or the different people at different schools, or how does that work?
Okay, so every school has a threat assessment team who meets monthly, and
Each school has that.
each school has
threat
their own
assessment.
team.
Okay.
And it's very specific who's on that team. There has to be an instructional staff member on the team. There has to be a counselor on the team. There has to be a representative from the administrative staff on this team, and there has to be the SRO has to be on the team.
Okay.
Okay, so they meet once a month, more if necessary, to discuss safety concerns within that individual school. Now that's mandated that has to occur under the Marjory Stoneman Public Safety Act. What's not mandated is that we meet on the district level. And school safety is so important to Dr. Burns that she felt like, well, the schools are doing it individually, but we're not doing it as a district office, and we need to, be meeting and doing this.
Right.
So I put together, now we hold monthly meetings, and the members consist of Dr. Burns attends every meeting, as well as the assistant superintendent, Mark Durham, the director of education, Misty Mathis, attends. The director of maintenance, Jeffrey Bunch, attends.
Yes.
Now you might want to ask why he attends. Well, what's his job? If we find any deficiencies in anything like fencing, unsecured doors, door locks that need to be replaced, or whatever,
That's the guy.
he attends our meetings. So
Yes.
now he knows what he needs to go and address. IT director, Carissa Bass, attends. And on occasion, we'll have the finance lady attend and a couple other people, depending on what the discussion is going to be that month. But we meet, and our sole topic is district-wide school safety. And we're constantly trying to identify weaknesses and address them and improving on them. So I think it has been very, very good thing.
I do too, and those reports come to us as board members, and we're constantly looking at stuff that the team has put together, and a lot of those things, they aren't inexpensive, but whatever needs to be done, we get it done. We get it
Absolutely.
done at a pace that is unprecedented if something's identified. And I know you're staying up on new legislation coming down, new mandates, and coming from the background of police, coming from the background of fire, just having that team put together, that someone is watching this stuff. I mean, it makes me smile that it's being done every 30 days. Most stuff in the fire service we do once a quarter, once a half, once a year. And some of that just gets lost in translation. But when you've got a team that is meeting every month, you really get to stay on top of what's working, what's not. And, case in point, last night I was at Yulee High School for their graduation, and they're doing a lot of construction, the add-on there for Yulee Middle, which is where we pull in and park as board members. And even that part of it was still secure. They added on to the fencing. They readjusted fencing, so even the construction part didn't diminish that security that was in place before the construction.
No, the crew that they have working out there, I've personally went out there and met with the foreman, and one of the nicest guys I've met. He and very strongly believes in school safety himself. He's familiar with school campuses, and he knows what needs to be done to keep them safe. He's constantly on his guys about keeping the gates shut and locked at all times. I mean, they're doing a tremendous job.
They are, yes, I can assure that. So I've been out there multiple times, and last night, leaving that campus, we thought we could kind of sneak around and get to the parking lot a little quicker. We learned that we couldn't. We needed to just stay in the main flow and go the normal routes. A couple of us thought we could kind of duck out, but the fences were all locked. So it was kind of a maze, but at the end of the day, it was the right thing, and that school, remains just as safe as it was before the construction. So
it's funny you brought up the story about walking around the school and being stopped. What did you say, 2 or 3 times? So just yesterday, I was visiting Callahan Intermediate School.
Okay.
And I had pulled in their drop-off loop and received a phone call. So I stopped my car on the loop, and so I didn't want to be on my phone while I was driving, and stopped and took the phone call, and I'm sitting there talking on my phone. Next thing I know, here comes my school resource officer driving up in his car. Quite fast, actually, until they got up and saw who it was. Well, one of the faculty members actually called and reported me sitting in the car drop-off line.
Is that right?
In a marked police car. They couldn't tell from where I was sitting because I don't have the lights on top.
Okay. Okay.
They actually called and reported me sitting in the car drop-off line. That's how vigilant they are.
Al, as the chief of police for the Nassau County School District, that's got to make you smile big time that you know, that I say they, you know, the administration, the teachers, the custodians, the cafeteria workers, everybody really stays on top of this.
They do, and that just comes from the training that we do. We're constantly hammering the training away to them. One of the things we do, we have a great relationship with our partners, Fernandina Beach Police Department, Nassau County Sheriff's Department, and one of the things we do, anytime they hire a new officer, they'll bring them to our schools in plain clothes like you're wearing, and they'll try to access our campuses intentionally, try to find a breach to get in. And then if they, on a very rare occasion, almost never, if they do get in, they'll see how far they can walk until somebody stops them like they stopped you. And so we're always testing them, we're always training. You know, it's been a long road to convince the faculty and staffs, you know, have them buy into all these safety protocols, because what is safety? Safety is inconvenience for everybody, right?
Yes.
I think everybody can relate to flying, TSA, right?
Yes.
So whenever 9/11 happened and the TSA created, how inconvenient did flying become?
Overnight. But I feel a lot safer when I get on a plane
Feel a lot
now.
safer. Same thing with all these safety protocols. They're very inconvenient, but they work.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you very much for taking a few minutes. I know you're busy right now this time of year, and even though we're going through graduations, we still got teachers on campus. We've still got work that needs to be done, but I appreciate greatly the time you took with me and explaining some of those topics to me. So
Well, I enjoyed sitting down with you, Jamie. It's been a pleasure.
thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Jamie Deonas, your candidate for re-election to the Nassau County School Board, District 1. To learn more about me, please visit votejamiedeonas.com. Again, that's votejamiedeonas.com.